While we start with this, Basic Education Minister Angie Motsheka has met with the Cabinet after talks with teacher unions on Friday. 5 unions have called for schools to close during the COVID-19 peak, but there's no decision as yet. Now the Federation of Governing Bodies of South African Schools believes there's no need for a shutdown. FEDSA CEO Paul Colditz joins us now via Skype. Paul, thanks a lot for joining us this evening. You're saying that there's no need to panic just as yet. Are you against the shutdown during the peak period, or should schools continue according to you?
Good evening, Faith, and thank you for the opportunity. We actually met with the Minister on Thursday, together with other SGB associations and Principals Association. And yes, we're of the view that schools should not close, primarily because we believe it is not in the best interest of children. Scientists from various disciplines have advised that it is not in their best interest. This is health, psychological disciplines, social disciplines, etc. And ultimately, if you look at the best interest of the children, it is best for them to be at schools and not to be running around in the streets where they do get infected. If they go to schools, at least they're screened. At least there is the opportunity to refer them to health officials and health authorities to attend to their immediate needs. At least they're being fed, 9 million of them at least. And then there's also the other consideration of parents. Parents need to go to work. Parents need to know that their children will be under controlled supervision, in controlled circumstances, where the non-pharmaceutical measures and protocols are strictly observed. So, all in all, we believe it's better for schools to reopen rather than to close. In fact, I mean, the infections are taking place in the communities, not necessarily at schools. We don't have evidence of any infection having taken place at schools. So ultimately, we believe it's better for schools to reopen, to remain.
Yeah, now a joint statement was released by various unions, I believe it was yesterday, just regarding some of their concerns. And one such was around the readiness of schools, saying that indeed during the time that grade 12s were received with grade 7s, the schools were not necessarily adequately prepared. And now when we're looking at the fact that more schools more children now are being allowed in schools, this further exacerbates and puts pressure on the system in itself. What say you about that joint statement released by various unions?
Well, we don't want to be insensitive to the concerns of teachers and the unions, not at all. But the point is the important message that the President gave us last Sunday, and that is that it is every single South African's responsibility to take control of the fight against the coronavirus. It's not schools that are not complying with the measures. It is people in the schools. So if there is a complaint with regard to the non-compliance with all the protocols and health and safety measures, then it means that the leadership of the schools are not taking a responsibility. That includes the school governing bodies, the principals, the school management teams, whoever is in charge and in a leadership position at the schools. They must take responsibilities and make sure that children and teachers alike, all education workers, are admitted to schools and in a controlled environment.
Yeah, what do you say to teachers who would say they are afraid of going back to school? I'm sure you've experienced numerous complaints as well as concerns being articulated by teachers fearing of catching the virus whilst within the education system in itself. How do you respond to that?
Yes, well, the chances of contracting the virus in the community is greater than contracting it at the schools. That's our position. The fact is, every single South African is anxious, every single South African, unless you have a very, very, very strong belief to the other side, every South African is fearful. Every South African should, in fact, be very concerned about the infections. And that is why every single South African, whether you're in schools and whether you're outside of the school, should take responsibility. The fact is that schools are not responsible for the spreading of the virus. It's happening in the community. Whether schools are open, whether schools are closed, it's not going to change the trajectory of the rate of infection in the country. I'm absolutely convinced of that.
Is the schooling year salvageable at this extent? I mean, we've got these unions that are calling for matrics for basically to return to school after the 17th of August and say, looking at this peak period, let all children remain at home. After the 17th of August, they can now come back to school. But when you're considering all factors, can we still salvage the schooling year, or are we calling it quits for now?
Well, I'm afraid if the schools are going to close, then it would have severe consequences for the rest of not only the schooling, it will have severe consequences for the entire country. If you're closing schools at this stage, you might as well close the country because of the severity of a decision to close schools. It will impact millions of children, 13 million in fact. It will impact at least that same number of parents. We're talking about 26 million individuals that would be in fact impacted. So it is possible, and we've seen it in all of the schools that are our members that have reopened, with some exceptions, that the reopening has been very successful. In fact, we're being told that some at these schools, they're ahead with the coverage of the curriculum, and we're not talking about the trimmed curriculum. We're actually talking about the original curriculum. They're ahead with the covering of the curriculum compared to where they were last year this time.
And then when we've got the Department of Basic Education, I mean, you've had a meeting with them. What has been their response? Are they resolute on keeping schools open because they're still deadlocked in meetings? Or are they looking at shifting as more and more calls for the schools to shut down continue to grow with unions?
Yeah, well, the minister was very clear and very careful not to preempt any decision before she had consulted with all role players and stakeholders in the sector. But it was clear from our perspective that the minister was actually sympathetic towards our position with regard to the schools remaining open.
Paul, we're going to leave it there for this evening. Paul Colditz there from the Federation of Governing Bodies of South Africa, giving us their take as the growing calls increase on schools to shut down until the 17th of August. And that is when we're anticipating that COVID-19 peak to actually subside.